Today, I want to remind you that readers make deliberate choices about how to use writing about reading to make their reading stronger. One of the ways they do this is to use notebooks as a tool for when stories get especially complex. As readers, we can learn some tips about reading from writers. One of the things we can learn from writers is how they plan for writing complex books. That can give us some clues about how to tackle reading complex books. Let's study this really cool diagram and see if we can learn from it. It's part of J.K. Rowling's planning work for the 5th Harry Potter book. You know that Harry Potter is a long series, more than 4,000 pages in the 7 books. Writing it must have been a huge challenge. J.K. Rowling had to keep track of where all the characters were and what they were doing, and what was happening with all the different plot lines. She had to remember who liked whom, who had which powers, who was cursed with which spell, over thousands of pages. So here's what she did. See what you notice as you study this for 30 seconds. What did Rowling do to keep track of all this information? Pay attention to the columns and the rows and what she records. You probably noticed that she kept track of what time of year everything was happening. And some of the columns are for relationships and people, and some of them are for topics like the prophecy. There's definitely a lot to notice here. You've got different types of columns plus rows for each chapter. You may have noticed that there were some blank boxes too. So sometimes there was nothing to say about Professor Snape in certain chapters. You may have noticed that this is also quite messy. I think there are a few things we can learn from this diagram that would help us do stronger, smarter notebook work. I want you to keep thinking about that. But listen for which tips I'll name, which will be most helpful for you. One thing I am noticing is that Rowling didn't keep track of everything, just the really important stuff. That's a goal that you could take on in your notebook, keeping track of what is confusing or important, but not trying to write down everything. A second thing that I see here is that she revises right on the page. She crosses things out, draws arrows, adds an extra writing in some boxes. So a goal that you could take on would be to work on revising in your notebook more, adding and deleting and changing things instead of only writing new ideas. And a third thing I'm noticing is that she chose this style of notes, a big grid, that she thought would help her capture her ideas best. She could have used another structure, like a list or a timeline or a sketch. So we can learn from that you can make a deliberate choice about what kinds of structures will help you keep track of the important stuff. How could one of these tips help you address one of your challenges? When you go back to the teaching platform, you'll think more about that question.